Hello everyone, my name is FlareBlitzed and welcome back to Katawa Shoujo, part 35 of this series, and with great sadness but also great love that this may be the last video on this wonderful visual novel. Last time we dropped the subject, but let's be more open with Lilly in the hopes that in the future she will be more open with us. The memory of that single letter Iwanako sent me comes back into my mind. I never saw her again, but after I was sent to Yumako, she wrote me one letter. Lilly's face shows an expression I know well. I've piqued interest. I'd be slightly offended if it's simply a matter of her curiosity for her, but she's never been very good at masking her reactions. In hindsight, it didn't really say much. What was going on in my old class, how she was faring, and almost as an afterthought, but it was probably the best for the both of us that we don't see each other again. After reading it, I end up reassessing a lot of things I thought I'd managed to work out. For the most part, that letter reminded me that the world around me was still moving, and just how much I'd become isolated from it. And I guess it also reminded me of what I lost. She gives the information some thought before her face lights up in realization. No doubt she's worked out that it was this letter which had contributed to my angst during that lunchtime on the rooftop. It's a rare sight to see Lilly quite so lost for words. Her entire persona is a little deflated from her earlier ripped interest. As charismatic as she is, in the end that isn't any replacement for life nor relationship experience. Perhaps it is better she sent it than not. How's that? It can be difficult to work out how best to communicate with those you haven't met in a long time, all the more so considering your separate situations. Instead of doing what was easiest, she built up the courage to talk to you one last time, not only for her sake but for how it sounds for yours as well. Maybe. I don't hate her for it, not that I really ever did, but I don't know. Probably a more non-committal answer than I should give, but it isn't without cause. I've never looked at the situation from Iwanako's perspective like that before. Seconds pass in silence before Lilly speaks again. Moving to Yumako must have been hard for you, having your friends and even your girlfriend taken from you for no fault of your own. The worst of it passed while I was in the hospital. When all that surrounds you is four white walls and a small television, your mind takes on a life of its own. Everything is the same. Lilly left, so how is this a good ending? The snap of my mobile phone's closing contrasts with the ambient chatter and noise audible even in the hallway outside the library. It's the first day of the summer holidays, a time that had perpetually seemed so far away, and yet it's now not only here but also made painfully obvious by the students, or lack therefore, left in the school. Most students have returned home to spend holidays with relatives by now. The few that are left are mostly chatting between themselves, usually about what they intend to do in the coming weeks. It makes me feel like the odd one out for taking advantage of the school library being open for the first several days of holidays. Ostensibly, it's for students to drop off any books they've borrowed and have yet to return, and for those who'll have their parents pick them up to help pass the time until they get whisked away. Thanks to the recent lengthy phone call from my parents, who had so rudely woken me from my sleeping on a beanbag at the back of the library, I'm now in the latter category. Slide my phone back into my pocket, this time remembering to set it to silent. I go back into a quiet and wholly placid room. It's a nostalgic sight. Just as when Lilly first led me to the library, the orange tint of sunset bathes the room in its light while Hanako sits on a beanbag silently reading and Yuko fusses, just barely visible behind the counter. Hanako especially noticeably more quiet than usual since yesterday's happenings, but I can't really blame her. It wasn't just me that depended on that person after all. I quietly walked back to the beanbag near her where I'd sat before, being doubly careful not to make any unnecessary noise. Hello, Hanako. The soft puff it gives as the bag takes my weight makes Hanako's eyes flick towards me, but only for a second. I get a feeling that Hanako's been quiet only partially out of sadness following Lilly's departure. Rather, she seems more thoughtful and measured than I expected, perhaps due to her desire of working out how to deal with Lily's leaving rather than just being depressed over it. It makes me a little proud of her. Hey, Hanako? Yeah? Still going ahead with your idea of travelling? She gives a determined look. I'll be starting in a day or two. Naomi's decided to come with me too. Wow, quick start. Where are you two headed to first? I think we're going to start by going north, then loop down and go southward. So, Hokkaido's going to be first? She gives another nod, more attentive than the last. The significance of that place is not lost on either of us. Do you know how you're going to handle the travelling expenses and accommodations? Yeah, I've worked everything out. I think it should be okay. Naomi says she has her side worked out too. You know that if you ever need anything, you can just call, right? I gave her my number before. Any time of the day is fine. She gives a smile, which in itself feels like a small personal victory. I know. Thanks, Hisao. Maybe Lily was right. Although I may offer Hanako any help I could possibly give, I feel as if I know she doesn't need it. She really has grown. She has. Hanako's plans for her holidays are in sharp contrast to my simple following of my parents' suggestions to stay with them. Holidays have always made me feel less excited than most, though, so maybe this is just a return to the status quo. Before my heart attack, I'd always lived so aimlessly that holidays weren't all that much different from my everyday life anyway. After school, I wandered around a bit in the city, often hanging out with some friends before making my way home to eat dinner with usually one of my parents, but rarely both. If you want context as to what happened between the restaurant and the school itself, then I would strongly suggest checking out part 34, where it went through literally the majority of what we skipped through. It's literally exactly the same dialogue, word for word, aside from the choice itself that we made at the very beginning of this video. Their work schedules didn't leave much time for them to be home, and going there straight from school would just have meant I'd end up feeling bored. I was an urbanite through and through. Urbanite. Trying to call yourself an element while you're in the surroundings of the urban environment. Since coming to Yamako though, it feels like I've fundamentally changed as a person. The phone call with my parents erased any traces of doubt that I might have had on that, in any case. Well before I had exercised a fairly normal level of independence for a teenager, that being not a whole lot, my parents were more than pleased to hear of my newfound ability in taking care of myself. Laundry, cooking for myself, cleaning, all in addition to other general chores that have come from living without parents around. Just little menial things I've had to pick up, but with relative ease. When I think about it, I'd always depended on them, even if they hadn't been at home all the time. To say I never depend on anyone after moving to the Yamako dormitories would be far from the truth though. You relied on Lily, and relied on Misha and Shizune, and also partially as well you relied on Hanako. Excuse me? The two of us look up at the awkwardly fidgeting figure in front of us. Some things never change. I suppose you want to shut the library up for the day. It's getting close to closing time, so, oh, I'd forgotten that the library closes earlier during the holidays. Hanako and I both get up and dust ourselves off, placing our books back on the shelf behind us. The fact that our taste in reading material have a fair amount of overlap is useful at times. With a bow to Yuko to apologise for taking so much time, Hanako takes her leave of us. See you tomorrow, Hisao. Bye. And with that, she walks out of the large wooden aging doors that herald the entrance to the library. She's a quiet person, isn't she? I suppose I should be surprised at a staff member sharing personal opinions like this, but after knowing Yuko for a while it's largely expected. Our relationship is more personal rather than one with her acting as an authority figure, yeah. I think that's just how she is. She's got a lot more confidence in herself these days though. I don't know her as well as you do, but I think I agree. It's nice to see her talking to people here. She never used to do that before. Hey Yuko, you know about Lily's leaving, right? She told me herself a few days ago. It must be hard, leaving everyone behind like she is. She quickly looks back to me after she says this, probably remembering that I went to her for advice on the relationship between Lily and me before. Are you going to be okay? That's a difficult question. It's something I'd rather not think about for now, though, given more pressing issues. Something seems kind of off about this whole deal, don't you think? Yuko appears to think for a while, absent-mindedly scrunching her face up in a variety of creative ways she does. I don't think I really know her well enough to make that kind of judgment. I'm sorry I can't be of more help. Nah, that's fine. That's fine, sorry. I was just sort of thinking aloud. I give a deep sigh and scratch my head in frustration. There's just so much stuff happening at once I've no control over. It feels like I've been swamped. I think everyone goes through times like that. What's important is to concentrate on what you can do, rather than what you can't do. At least, that's how I see it. Yeah, only look at the internal things which you can control rather than the external things which you can't control. But that is quite hard in itself to not get out of your head. If I didn't think like that, I don't think I'd be able to manage my life as it is. She says it with a smile and a light tone, but her words are far from any kind of joke. Yuko, I think, is one character in the game that doesn't know how to make a joke. But not like that's a bad thing. Being pulled between two jobs as she is, just to hopefully make enough money not only to live but also for university, must be exhausting. Perhaps that's why, coming from her, this feels like it has more meaning than if it had come from most others. I guess you've got a point there. Thank you for your advice once again, Yuko. She bows deeply and smiles again. I think these two are kind of more than just acquaintances, but not friendly on hugely friendly terms, before making her way back to the counter where she spends so much of her time, more like they have similarities of interests. The tiny wings of a cardboard crane in my fingers only just visible in the dim light of my room, just a little of the moonlight being able to peek through the curtains and around their edges. I lie still in my dark bed for a long time, idly looking up at the little origami bird. It feels like a lot's happened since Lilly folded this, but at the same time it feels like very little has changed. Compared to everyone else, I'm back to square one. I might have a newfound idea of where I want to go in life, but that's hardly something that affects me now. I don't say this square one. Square one literally means you just got out of a hospital and you're actually going to the new school in a way, so you're not exactly at square one. How'd I get changed? I know that much. If anything, she just makes me feel like I've got no excuse to be like this, considering her previous situation. Lilly, though. I turn the bird in my fingers another way, looking at it from yet another angle. When I first met her, she seemed aloof and perhaps somewhat distant. Her actions were always careful, measured and precise, and her carefully maintained composure always gave the appearance of unerring confidence and serenity. But do you think that for the first time that these decisions she is making are rash? In time, she became less formal, just a bit, but enough. It felt good to see her lowering her inhibitions around me and open up, even just a little, of her own accord. It felt as if I was seeing her real self slowly becoming more vibrant and visible. Now though, I'm beginning to have doubts. Perhaps they're to be expected after what is, effectively, the two of us breaking up. They don't feel new or strange though, but rather like an old book being found and dusted off. I soon realized after meeting Lilly that she saw me as she did Hanako, as someone who needed help and care. At first I simply thought that we'd be fine as friends, helping each other through our limited time together in school. But then I began to treasure our moments together more and more, from our quiet walks to our talking over lunch. The good sides of her personality became ever more obvious and even more likable. The absence caused by Lily's trip to Scotland to visit her long-distance family and sick aunt only made me realise how much I liked just being around her, and I had thought that she felt a similar way. For her though, maybe that wasn't everything to our relationship. Even after she returned to Japan, that just meant she lost her family once again after meeting them for such a brief time. She lived so much for her life without her family around, not to mention with Akira's working long hours, that she had little choice but to be like that. I had thought that her sense of independence to be good and admirable trait. It was in stark difference to my reliance on my parents before my heart attack, as reluctant as I may have been to admit it. However, it also meant that she never let people get too close to her. She lost her family likely due to her blindness, went to a different school from anybody because she knew because of it. It worked all the harder to make sure she didn't end up a burden on her sister and those around her. And now, Akira's going to Inverness, just like the family she thought she'd lost. But she never told me of her plans, and as conflicted as she was about them. Lilly didn't want to be a burden on anyone, including me. I'm an idiot. I never questioned it. I never tried to be there or ask when she needed me to. I just set my life up and expected it to stay that way forever, with the two of us having a nice long relationship where we push forwards towards our future together. A small pit of frustration and anger at myself wells up in my chest. I just let everything happen, never even trying to help Lilly. Just her being there was enough. I thought I could keep going on as if that were true. But that could never have been enough. It was like a childlike dependence on somebody without any attempt to understand or help their situation. Thanks to that, I lost Lilly. I lost one person I loved most because I wasn't there for her when she needed me. With an increasingly angry feeling washing over me, I turned over and set the crane back on the desk next to my clock. The place where it had lived since that day when she folded it for me. Since that day when she herself said that my burdens needn't be my own. The obnoxious bright red mirrors on my alarm clock shine through the darkness of the room onto my tired eyes. 10 o'clock, evening, curfew would be soon. I wonder. Akira mentioned they'd be leaving this evening. I have no idea when their flight is, but that means there's a chance, however small, that they might not have already left. Adrenaline starts to move through my body as I sit up on my bed, my eyes suddenly wide with possibility. There's no guarantee they haven't left. Indeed, it's likely they already have, but there's also a chance they haven't, however small it may be. Just this once, just as I should have before. I stand up and rush over to my cabinet, throwing out some clothes as fast as I can and sliding them on in quick succession. Each second that goes by is a second I can't regain, a second that may mean the difference between catching them and losing them forever. Even if I fail, I have to try. I can't let her leave everything behind without even trying to stop her, without, just this once, being there for her. With the last of my clothes slipped on, I hastily grabbed the phone off the desk. Luckily, the number of the local taxi company is still in my call history. A gruff, unenthusiastic voice announces the name of the company while I pace around the room. It takes some effort to slow down my voice and keep it clear over the phone. The chilly night air sweeps against me as I open the dormitory door, but nevertheless I keep up my brisk speed as I half jog, half run out of the school gates. It may not be curfew just yet, but it's precariously close. If there were a guard around, they'd no doubt have some questions for me, but it looks like I managed to come out just before they arrive or they're around a corner. My pace picks up as I make my way through the school gardens, their nighttime allure all but lost when I began to run to the school gate. The lamps on the courtyard, dim as they are, provide just enough illumination to light the way and prevent me from tripping over. The buildings themselves take on a rustic, almost antique-looking edge when I glance at them. Looking back, it seems strange that they once appeared so dark and gloomy to me. Now they just look to be somewhat anachronistic school buildings, the same as any others bar their age. Leaving the gates behind me, I pull up to a stop just before the taxi, parked just as Akira's car had been. Its gaudy and bright lit sign looks out of place in the quiet country backdrop. I patiently squeeze myself through the door, giving the driver the address of where the two should hopefully be staying. By the time the taxi pulls up after its trip at maddeningly... oh gosh, I remember this place. It's well and truly deep into the night. The house is truly enormous, its sheer size much larger than I expected, and ominously still. Fearing the worst, I asked the driver to stay just in case my efforts are for naught. A single press on the fancy intercom system outside the gate produces a soft electronic melody in the otherwise silent room. It's not long before a somewhat deep, gruff voice can be heard from it. "This is a Hakamichi residence. Please state your name and why you're bothering us this late." I press on despite inwardly wincing at the reasonable annoyance audible in his voice. "It's Hisao Nakai. I was hoping to meet Lilly or Kira if they're still here." Surprisingly, I managed to summon quite some energy to my voice, enough to make the other side of the intercom silent. A few seconds pass, but just before I press the button again and ask what's going on, a light turns on outside the front door. I strain my eyes to try and make out who is coming though, but as he comes past a large parked car with fishing rods sticking out the back, his identity becomes clear. His face is typically placid and motionless as he saunters up to the gate. He's still childlike in his mannerisms despite his demeanour. With a press of a few buttons from behind the fence, the gate slowly opens. "Hisao, what are you doing here?" I think this is the most emotional I've ever heard from his voice. Not that it would be hard to reach that mark. Akira told me that she and Lilly would be staying here before they left for the flight. I need to talk to Lilly, just one last time. Are they still here? The look on his face says everything. I failed. I was too late. For one time when I actually needs to act quickly and... Actually, it's possible. What is it? He's a bit taken aback by my fervour, but I can't help it at this point. They left not long ago, only a few minutes before you arrived, in fact. If you go straight to the airport, you might be able to, Hisao. I dart back towards the waiting taxi, grabbing what little money is left in my pocket as I go. Thanks, Hideaki. With that, I take a seat, and in short order bark out my destination. Goodness sakes. My chest beats wildly as I tear down the street. My body twisting this way and that to slip between pedestrians and walking back and forth beside me, with the road solidly blocked by taxis and other cars, dropping off passengers and picking up others in the time they have to wait. We end up having to stop almost a block away, but that's in the past now. What matters is reaching Lilly. One foot hits the ground, the other quickly following without the slightest thought, as if my legs have taken on a life of their own, and all my mind can do is concentrate on the view ahead of me. Time is running out. Just one glimpse of that long hair of hers, that long yellow hair that was the same colour as the wheat that stretched as far as the eye could see. In the end, I depend on Lilly, just like Hanako did, even after we started going out. It still doesn't feel like she really ever let herself depend on me, except for one moment. That one moment where we held each other tightly on that bright yellow field. At that time, she must have feared losing me just as she did everyone else. That's why just this once, the night air wraps around me, draining every last remnant of warmth out of my body to the extent that it feels more like midwinter than a summer night. My fingers, my hands, my feet, they all feel increasingly cold. The sound of the passing crowds is reduced to no more than a background hum while the sounds of my shoes hitting the pavement echoes loudly. Every step surging towards the person I have to catch. Forced by my chest tight in response to the cold of the night, I rest an arm over to try and settle it down. When the airport comes to view though, I realise this feeling as one I felt before. Not now. Not of all times of this. Please not now. I take a gulp and shoulder on regardless, pushing my body as far as it will go. Sweat pours off me as I hurtle forward, my shoulder hitting someone's side and my mind suddenly flooding with emotions and memories. I continue on without an apology. I have to keep moving now. If I stop, I'm not sure I could begin again. And even if I could, it would be all for naught if I'm not in time. I hit another person, then another, offering little resistance to get bounced about. My feet feel numb. My arms are losing all feeling. My chest forces me to hunch over awkwardly, tightening ever more. That afternoon in the snow, that time when my life irreversibly changed. Images of Hanako and that damn letter flashed over and over in my mind. The first love I lost thanks to my condition. I can't let that happen again. I don't care what happens to me anymore. I just need to see her one last time. There! Those two! A sliver of yellow and white comes into view some distance down the road, her figure silhouetted by the lights emanating from the airport entrance. Lilly! 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 Stop please, Lilly! Come on, Lilly, I know you're here and it's far beyond... Gah! My view suddenly spins out of control and ends up on the ground. My body haphazardly sprawled after hitting someone and stumbling over. Before I can assess the damage, an unbelievable pain ignites in my body. All my thoughts are blanked as I curl up and frantically clutch at my chest. Hey, you okay? That was a really bad fall. This pain. I can't. Ah! Any sharp knock could do me in. Any overexertion. I thought I could overcome my limits this once. Something's wrong with him. What's the matter? The voices of those gathering around me are gradually replaced by a loud ringing in my ears. By now I'm unable to move my head. My eyes turn upwards to see the mute moving of their lips. Even as I clutch my chest, I realize I can't feel my fingers anymore, nor my feet. It feels like my entire body is shutting down, starting from my extremities. With one last effort, I turn my head down the road towards the airport entrance that's casting its light over me. Lilly is there, behind the crowd. Her head is tilted, but only just slightly. I can feel my vision dimming as I try to yell out, but nothing emerges from my mouth despite my best efforts. Slowly but surely, my vision begins to black out the scene before me. So, This is how it ends. I failed. I was so close. So very close. But at the very last moment, my condition seized my chance at a new life and dragged me back. Now I'm going to die. Sprawled out just meters from an airport, with a crowd of babbling people surrounding me and with Lily leaving for Scotland just a little distance ahead. Lily. That last word extinguishes the last of my energy. The world falls into a deep, inescapable blackness as every muscle in my body shuts down. I'm sorry, Lily. I was too late. Damn. It was a good attempt, but nothing. What's going on? As I slowly open my eyes, a bright white light assaults my retainers. For minutes I just lie where I am. My eyes are staring ahead while my scattered thoughts coalesce in my slowly waking mind. Slowly but surely, the white begins to come into focus as a bare expanse begins to be drawn across my field of vision. It's only when the light fixture comes into view that my mind clicks that this is the ceiling above me. Slowly levering myself up, I suddenly absorb through all my senses the details of the room I'm in. The smell and taste of strong bleach hang in the air, lending the impression of a place just slightly too clean to be natural. In a fenced pale peach-coloured walls, all perfectly painted, without a crack, stain, or imperfection, a single framed painting hangs on the wall, perfectly straightened, like the walls is as boring and inoffensive as can be. My attention is grabbed by the translucent curtain waving around my vision, my eyes following it to the open window it covers. When I move my right arm to try and lift myself up and look through it, I feel the catheter dig in uncomfortably. It's only now, too, that I notice the cannula tubes winding against my cheeks and into my nose. After some fidgeting, I settle for just looking around the corner of the window. Beyond the thick leaves of several large trees, I can see the greenery below, backing out onto a field, a customary island of green on the outskirts of the city. Judging by the sun outside, it's noon, of which day though I'm not sure, so I'm in a hospital once again. I let out a long tired breath as I try to collect my scattered thoughts, my mind seemingly cast in a dozen directions all at once, with as many emotions running through me. After slowly lying back down, I decide to start at the beginning, why I'm here. I cast my mind back, but I can't work out a smooth recollection of what happened. The events of last night, or whichever night it was, come back more as a series of snapshots than any cohesive memory. Lying on the bed looking at the origami bird. Toko to Hideyaki outside the Hakamichi residence. Running down the street, passing pedestrians and bumping into more and more of them. Falling. Looking up at the staringly bright airport entrance, seeing Lily's back as I lay on the ground. The silence of a private room suddenly feels overwhelming. So that's it. I had my chance to correct my mistake and I blew it. Whether I was at fault for neglecting my medication, disregarding to pace myself, or my body was for giving out so soon, it doesn't matter. All that matters is that, once again, I'm alone. The pastoral blue pillow yields with little resistance as I let myself fall back onto the bed. Its starchy case, along with the starchy sheets, provided some comfort. Compared to the darkness of last night's events, the bright light of the room around me is striking. All it does, though, is emphasize how otherworldly places like this are. Arrhythmia. A strange word. A foreign alien one. One that you don't want to be in the same room with. A rare condition. It causes the heart to act erratically and occasionally beat way too fast. It can be fatal. It was a miracle that you were able to go on for so long without anything happening, they said. And then it did. My condition had taken away everything. My old school was of no importance anymore. My home was reduced to a faraway place. Both my friends and my first love simply stopped visiting after a length of time. I became cynical and embittered, distant and subdued. In my defense, no person could avoid that after such a thing happening to them. But nonetheless, I left the hospital as a very definitely changed person. Things changed. I made new friends in Hanako, Shizni, and Misha. I found a new sense of home in my dormitory, a new interest in science and the world around me, and I found direction to my life that I had never felt before. But I also discovered other things. The sense of isolation in Mako and its surrounds was not entirely unwelcome. The quiet giving a peace of mind I might not have found elsewhere, but it gave the area a feeling of being pushed out of the way, of being kept out of sight. People in the streets would sometimes glance awkwardly, or quickly turn their heads as they realized they were staring. Even if my condition wasn't visible, my uniform was. Even if it wasn't, I was still different. I took 17 pills a day, morning, midday, and night. My scar, though hidden behind clothing, was still a permanent mark of my condition, and most of all, there was a very real possibility of death. A bad fall, an absent-minded hard hit on the back, a simple sprint taken too far. Anything could have set my heart off, and several times I tethered on the edge of the abyss even with all the care I took of myself. But that was fine. I could have lived with all of that, because there was one final thing I'd found, or rather refound, after entering Yamako, which was once again snatched away before my eyes. It's only now that I realized just how delicate my newfound sense of happiness was. Everything depended on her, the lich pinch of my life since I first entered Yamako as a sullen, confused, and aimless transfer student. Lilly Satu was one person I could depend upon above all others, and who reciprocated the love that I felt for her. But I failed her, and only realized it all too late. I thought I could just set my life up and continue that way forever, but the real world doesn't work like that. I finally realized the meaning of those words, only to be struck down as I confronted my failure to do so in time. The surroundings I am in now are all too familiar. It's as if Yamako was but a dream, and I'm still recovering from my first major heart attack. Maybe that's why I feel so tired. It feels almost as if I've lived the entire last few months of my life in the space of minutes. The weight of my eyelids closed my eyes, my physical and mental exhaustion letting me offer no resistance. Unintelligibly mumbling at the head of the bed steers me out of my sleep. With my eyes still closed, I can focus and make out someone, presumably a nurse, bidding farewell to a doctor. As I open my eyes, I notice the door close in my peripheral vision. The doctor stands reading some notes off a clipboard held in his hand, carefully looking over the pages. After consulting his obviously very important documents, he looks up and notices my gaze. It's now that I notice something slightly odd about his expression and general disposition, but I can't quite put my finger on it. "Ah, I see you're awake, Mr. Nakai." His quick glance to my bed end to verify my name shows that his documents obviously didn't have it written on them. "I must admit that this is a bit unfortunate. Your parents visited us earlier while you were asleep. I could notify them that you're awake now if you'd like." Thanks, that would be good." I gave a somewhat dazed reply, most likely the one he'd expected, before really thinking about what I'm saying. "Not a problem. If you have any questions you'd like to ask, I'll be happy to answer them. That is, unless you prefer to rest. The anesthetic's still going to be affecting you a bit, I'm afraid." The anesthetic, of course. That'd be why I felt so strange at first when I woke up. I slowly shake my head, not wanting to dislodge any pipes or cause myself any more discomfort than necessary. The doctor politely puts down his clipboard in response. "I guess my main question is, what exactly happened? To put it simply, you unfortunately had another heart attack. While not as severe as your first, you were very lucky it occurred so close to a hospital. After being stabilized, you were taken to the operating room. What followed was keyhole surgery in order to insert a temporary pacemaker. All in all, the incident happened 2 days ago, with emergency treatment being carried out very soon afterward. Since then, we kept you under close observation while you were asleep. Will I be alright? Are there any lasting problems?" Compared to the procedure carried out for your first heart attack, this was relatively minor. "While you will have to undergo surgery once more in a few days, time to remove a pacemaker, assume there are no complications, there should be no lasting implications." He continues talking, the subject shifting to a repetition of facts around arrhythmia and my medications that I already know for the most part. I start to nod and feign interest while my mind drifts. I begin to think about how perfectly hung the inoffensive painting hanging on the wall behind his shoulder is, and how neat and sterile the surroundings are, even including the doctor himself. If my mumbling bores you, you're quite welcome to say so, Mr. Nakai. Lord knows, I lost track of myself sometimes. He gives a short chuckle as his self-deprecating jokes I grimace awkwardly, having me rather badly caught out. The doctor's chuckle sounds different from that of the nurse at Yumako though. Come to think of it, as I ponder why, I realise why the man in front of me feels just that little bit off. His smile is neat and sterile. He delivers his little joke perfectly, with a customary inoffensive chuckle. It is like, rather than talking to the man whose name is neatly printed on the name tag pinned to his lab coat, I'm merely interacting with an actor reading off a pre-rehearsed script. Every action has been choreographed beforehand. I suppose he has to be this way though, being a doctor. He has to keep his neat and sterile smile when chatting to the girl with cancer slowly spreading through her body, when reassuring the woman who would surely die from childbirth, and with every other terminally and critically ill patient. That little bit of distance, that little bit of aloofness. It makes me wonder if I've been too harsh, especially considering it's a disposition far from being adopted by only by people in this profession. After all, the one I loved kept the same distance from others herself. Looking up to the doctor again, I realised I've been in thought with my head bowed for some time. I understand you must still be tired, you've been through a lot, and as I mentioned before, the anesthetic would still be affecting you. If you don't mind, I'll let you get some rest and tell your parents you've woken up for you. I think that would be good, thank you. So my previous assumption about the good ending of this game being drastically different is not correct. Like, Lilly still has ambitions to return to Scotland because her parents deemed it would be best to do so. He gives a curt nod before picking up his clipboard and making his way to the large white door in the corner of the room, closes it behind him with a thud. In the end, I'm alone again. Lilly's gone, Akira's gone, Hanako would be travelling, and even my parents have already left the hospital. 4 pale peach walls, 1 white ceiling, and a single open window to look out towards the world outside. It's hard to think of the future when the past is crowded around you, claustrophobic in its neat, sterile, starchy, bleach-smelling grip. Lost for what to do or focus on, I content myself with sleeping the time away as if this were all just another dream like Yumako had been. White. A sterile, clean white for a sterile, clean room. My eyes open, and I simply stare at the scene for some time. It's about as interesting as the television would be, mounted in its metal rack hanging off the scene ahead of the bed. Indeed, the television saw its entire use during the time my parents were here. Left on quietly as they waited for me to wake, it was about as banal as it had been the first time I ended up in hospital. Earlier today, an attending nurse had offered to turn off the EKG speakers. I refused simply because the sound is so entirely normal to me now. It's almost comforting in a way. The metronome-like regularity gives at least some feeling that time is moving, even in a place such as this. After some time of listening to its beeping while I'm fully awakened, though I realise there's another sound in the room. Concentrating all my efforts on listening, a task made rather easy by the lack of distractions, a tiny, teeny melody can be heard. No. Light and quiet, the music sounds almost fragile as if dwarfed by the EKG pulses. It wasn't that little wooden box. Tilting my head just slightly to the side in an effort to see the source of the melody without dislodging any of the sensors and pipes stuck into me, I noticed a little wooden box sitting on the nightstand next to the bed. My mouth opens just slightly while I silently watch the tiny yet metal drum slowly rotate inside, the little bumps on the surface gradually moving in and out of sight. This music box, it's the one I gave. The creaking of the door breaks me out of my reverie. My head and heart remain still as my eyes turn to see who comes through. Long tan skirt, peach off the shoulder sweater, pale, almost porcelain skin, blue clouded eyes and long... I knew it! All I could do is stare as Lilly slowly walks into the room, her fingers lightly running over the wall for orientation. My mind comes to a shuddering halt. Lilly? She stops mid-stride, her entire body tensing. Hi, Sal. Was it you? Her voice is quite pensive, echoing her expression. I thought you were... Lilly takes one tentative step forward, then another, as if she were holding herself back. Her control over composure is from naught though, and she finally rushes over to where I lay as the last of her resistance falls. Wow. I'm slightly taken aback when she grabs hold of me, hunching over as tears begin to fall from her cheeks. Since only minutes ago I thought she was on the other side of the world. After a moment of hesitation, I rest my right hand on her soft shoulder. So she really did hear, but by the time you conked out, it was too late for you to recognize that she did indeed hear you. Hi, Sal. Hi, Sal. Lilly's body trembles as her tears blot the pale green sheets, her emotions flooding through her carefully maintained exterior. With her face now closer and made easier to see for her pale skin being lit by the sunlight from the window, I noticed her cheeks being redder than they should be. It's okay, Lilly. It's okay. You don't need to. She's right herself quickly. Her crying forcefully stifled with both sadness and stubbornness remain her moistened eyes. Her prideful nature, always having been something to contend with, takes me off guard. Stop telling me not to worry about you, Hisao. Just this once, let me cry. I am caught speechless. She waits for a response, but her composure breaks again after a handful of seconds. I swallow hard to try and settle my own emotions while she weeps onto my bed, a strange mixture of relief and depression welling up. Lilly's here. She's really here. If I couldn't feel her skin under my hand, I'd hardly believe my own eyes. My efforts weren't for nothing. My body's attempt to take away everything that was important to me once again had been foiled. But now, I don't feel as happy as I thought it would. Seeing her here, crying like this over me, this is the one thing I'd wanted to avoid since coming to love her. No, ever since leaving the hospital. I'm sorry, Lilly. It's my fault I'm here. I shouldn't have tried to push myself so far. I give a self-deprecating snort. After months of keeping myself together so nobody worried over me, I went and did something like this. I guess I'm pretty dumb. With a couple of sniffles and a long breath, Lilly managed to pull herself together and calm down a little. Despite her red cheeks, moist eyes and the lines of her tears still visible, she delicately wears that weak smile she often give. You needn't blame yourself. I heard later that it happened as you were running down the road after me, right? Still. She wipes her eyes with the back of her hand, returning more to her old self as the rush of emotions wave off. Why'd you run after me, Hisao? I moved to respond but noticed her face tightening. Even after I said goodbye and I'd left Yamaka Academy. She takes a moment to steady herself, her emotions almost bubbling up once again. I just want to say that I'm sorry. Sorry? For the times when I wasn't there when you needed me. Until now, I thought you just being there would be enough. I only need you by my side to make any day feel better. Even if my body may be like this, I wanted to help you, Lilly. To be there when you needed someone. But you always were there, Hisao. Why did you want to go to Scotland, Lilly? Why? I told you before, because Akira is going and because of my family's summons to their home. Why didn't you say that you wanted to go? I'm not stubborn often, but this one time I think I need to be. I want you to stay here, Lilly. I want you to stay where everyone you know lives, and where all of your dreams and ambitions were made. If you choose to stay, I'll never leave your side. I won't let you lose another person. When I had my heart attack, I was snatched away from everyone and everywhere I knew. You showed me a new life after I came to Yamako. I lost my past, but you showed me a future. It's true that I haven't always been there for you. I'm unreliable. Sometimes I lied, and I thought I'd come to understand you when I hadn't even understood myself. Be that as it may, I want to give you a future as well. I want to be there for you, to share both your burdens and your happiness. Just like I promised back in Hokkaido. I want you to trust me. I know I had problems coming to put my trust in you. After losing so many people I'd known after my heart attack, but that's how I know that being unable to trust others can feel awful. That's why I can't watch you just throw everything away like this. I never want you to go through what I did. I will do anything to stop that. You can be quite steadfast when you want to be, can't you? As I said, it isn't often. My weak smile drops though, as the IV in my arm digs in a little. It's a harsh reminder of my tether to my condition. Lilly's face tenses as I let out a small gasp of pain, immediately making me wish I'd stifled it better. All I could do is sigh in defeat. I try not to let anyone worry over me for the entire time since I left hospital, but I can't even stop the one person I love most from crying over me. Even if I might finally be able to put my feelings into words, I feel pretty useless with a body like this. Every time I tried to reach towards something, it was just snatched away, and even now things only turn out for the best due to luck. I guess that's something else I should apologize for. All I could ever do is make you worry. Even now, there's very little chance I'll live anywhere near a full life. The feeling of Lily's warm, soft hand moving over my left cheek makes me lift my head up, her gentle smile and warm as she touches me. I think that is something very natural for you to say. You are always so sincere and so self-conscious. You are also reserved and mild-mannered, and patient to a fault with Hanako, yet curious about everything and everyone. When I said I missed you while I was with my family, I wasn't lying or exaggerating, but thought of you was never far from my mind, and helped me through that time. That's why I was so confused about what to do when my family summoned me. Even after I thought I'd made my decision, you tried your best to challenge me about it. I didn't confess to you out of pity or believing you were somehow different from what you are. I confessed because I never want to lose you, and want you to always be a part of my life, no matter what might change. You are a very beautiful person, Hisao. Your heart changes none of that, so please, don't apologize for yourself anymore. For a long time the silence reigns in the room. I'm not really sure what this newly born feeling inside of me is, but it pales into insignificance as I wordlessly gaze at Lily's smiling face, warm and gentle as it has always been. It's only as her thumb crosses my cheek, wiping away a single drop of moisture, that I realise this is all I've ever wanted. For what it feels like the first time, I give an earnest wide smile. As Lee feels it against her palm, she returns the gesture. More time passes before either of us says a word, neither of us needing speech to communicate our feelings to each other. I know I can't promise you that I'll always be around, or that we'll be together forever. With some difficulty I slowly lift my head, placing it on her pale shoulder, but I think I can at least take you to next year's Tanabata festival to make up for making you miss this year's. Lily's expression is one of surprise, though I can't say I blame her. You remembered that? I've got a pretty good memory. Sometimes. She raised her head a little and takes her hand for my cheek, giving a small amused giggle. I smile absent-mindedly at how earnest it is, almost girlish in its lightness. She's still smiling warmly. She collects herself and stands upright with her hand resting on my chest. It feels like I'm seeing her for the first time, the sun from a window glowing behind her, just as it did when I first walked into that room where she was drinking. Very well then. Shall we make it a promise between the both of us to go to next year's Tanabata together? Even if she can't see me doing so, I nod approvingly. I promise. I promise. Wow. So she must have gone a different flight then to Scotland then, if that was the case. Bloody hell. That was not a good ending than I expected. And it still doesn't feel a good ending in any kind of capacity, I'm not gonna lie. It still feels like a bad or normal ending in a way. It was just a slightly more prolonged normal ending. And I feel like that the good ending aspect of it happened mid-route when we were in the holiday house up north of Japan. It feels like that aspect, if the game ended there, then that you could have considered to be a good ending. But in this case, it still doesn't feel like it. Like, some situations about it were good, where they could confess finally about what they were feeling for one another, but I don't know. I'm not entirely... It's not that I have the place to be satisfied, but I'm not entirely happy with the outcome of that kind of scenario where it would go through there. What? Hold on. There's an epilogue to this? Akira, Lilly and I silently sit on the grassy embankment high above the local town, the breeze gently blowing through the cloudless sky. We may just be a few minutes walk from town, on a hill just outside its limits, but the view is entirely unexpected. Lilly sits beside me, her eyes closed, as the gentle breeze flows through her hair. This is a nice area. Yeah, I never knew a place like this was anywhere near Yamako. And I had to be the one to find it, of course. Akira's grin is genuine, but her tone is slightly different from her usual carefree nature. It's good that you're out of hospital though, Hisao. Nobody's more glad than I am. I can't stand hospitals. So, you two going back to the school tomorrow? Yep. Gosh. Akira chuckles in amusement before looking back out to the town below. The trees between the buildings sway in the wind. Pity we couldn't go up north for the summer holidays, or get to Tanabata. I wouldn't worry, there's always next year. You'll be graduated before next summer vacation, won't you? Yeah, there'll still be college after that, mind. Going to the same one? Likely. We both have high enough scores to meet the entry requirements. You sound sure. Don't worry, you're better than I am in most subjects. I guess we'll work it out in due time. That's the way. Just enjoy yourselves in Yamako while you're there. Lilly gives a sad sigh at the distinction made between Arika and the two of us. Do you really need to go back to Scotland? Yeah, the folks are already out for my blood as it is. You wouldn't meant to stay this long? She gives her trademark wide grin. Setting my boyfriend up with a passport. I thought you broke up from your boyfriend. You're taking him with you? Just for a while at first. He's a surprisingly worldly guy, or maybe it's a new boyfriend, so I think he'll do just fine. Akira gives an amused snort. If our father had his way, I'd have gone a long while ago. I just couldn't pass up an excuse to stay with my favourite little sister a little while longer, though. She leans right and gives Lilly a tight, playful hug, cheering her up considerably. It's nice to be with you one last time, though. For what it's worth, I'm in the same boat. Thanks, you two. I'll try and come back sometime, don't worry. It's a shame that the business keeps you so busy. The place won't run itself, I'm afraid, and I think it's going to be just the same over there. Considering that, I better get going. Have fun over there, Akira. Haha, will do. With a slight grunt, she lifts herself with her hands and stands up, dusting herself off as she goes. Well, I better be off. The plane won't wait for me after all. She has a certain unusual wistfulness in her tone of her voice, her eyes firmly planted on her sister. I'll be okay, Akira. Yeah, I know. Come now, it isn't that bad. You'll be able to see us again soon. It is strange to have Lilly reassuring and doubting Akira for once. She really has changed. Goodbye, Akira. Bye. For a second, the dark-clad figure looks down at both of us, smiling widely, perhaps more widely than I've ever seen her do before. She lets out a long, slightly wavering breath to steady herself before leaving, but then she slips her hand in her pocket and turns on her heel. And with that, she walks away, one hand held in the air as she goes. See you later, you two. A jazz tune with no beat, melody, or direction to the very end. After a few moments of sitting silently, Lilly and I pick ourselves up and dust ourselves off. Turning towards her with a broad smile, I hold out my hand. Shall we be off then? She takes my hand in hers with a gentle nod and a smile as beautiful and warm as ever. Indeed we shall, Hisao. Ah. As we set off towards the school, that wonderful smile engraves itself onto my memory. That wonderful smile that we both share. A wonderful, wonderful, prolonging smile. Our paths may be scattered and at times overshadowed by sadness, but they're also an irrevocable part of our lives and personalities. If I could change a single thing, I wouldn't, because my past was what led me here. That's why, even if all that's happened to us before, and all that may well befall us, together we'll keep walking forwards towards the future. Our future. So it was an epilogue then of some sorts. So that, folks, is everything. There are CGs missing here and there, which I still think that they're adult-related content. But there's a large block here, and that's Lilly's route, isn't it? It could still be adult content, but by the way, like that much in itself is evidence. Like, in order to like achieve all of the gallery stuff, you have to go through all of the game and get like the certain stuff and here and there. But then again, there's also as well the not cinema, the library, the different acts and stuff like that. Okay, so there's something else here that could be related to Shizney in a way. Like, rather than putting off running, go for it, and then from there recover, and then an extra scene plays with Shizney in a way. Like, that could be something. That's 98% completed. That's another route in itself. Okay, so that's all well and done. Hanako's route, that one there is helping out the student council rather than leaving them aside, which is why, yeah, Hisao ditches student council to read with Hanako. Because the other time around it would be, well, Hisao helps out the student council and not read with Hanako. What else is there? Lilly, that could be that. Rin, Emmy and Hisao discuss Rin's personality. Nomaya expounds at length about art as a career. So there's something else here, and it could be a prospect of pursuing art as an ambition or as a career of sorts. Shizney, there's all that. So there's little bits here and there. But I don't think, at any means given a time, that I will be going back through the game just to get like an absolute completion of everything. Because I think the majority of it is locked behind adult content only. Which is something I don't want to do. Like, I don't want that conscious over me. So that's that Emmy's. Then that's Hanako's. That's Lilly's, that's Rin's, and that's Shizney's. In that order. Then there's the jukebox as well, which I would probably think that all of them have been unlocked. Or if there are any hidden ones that it's not showing. But this, folks, has been an absolutely fantastic game. One of my personal favourite visual novels I've ever played. It was incredibly long, yes, and it might have taken me away from certain other visual novels I could have played, but I don't care, because do you know why? Because this visual novel is fantastic. I see why people highly rate this game. It is a journey of self-discovery after a traumatic incident, and whatever way you look at it, like whichever route is taken, but there's also a factor of getting a bad ending with Genji and committing Sudoku from all that. But we have ourselves 6 different individuals here. Number 1 is the protagonist, who suffered from a fatal heart attack which has caused him to become isolated in hospital for months on end, and then wasn't very happy initially about the idea of going to a school filled with disabled students, because he thought at that prospect that things would be very, very alien and very different. Whereas, as Muto said in one time, that the school's objective is to get the students that learn at that school in a place in the real world. The only difference is that there's a nurse always there to ensure that whenever a student does keel over, if they do so, then they can get the medical support and treatment that they need when it happens. For instance, Hisao's heart condition. Lilly's blindness is still something that you'd call condition, and eyes themselves are called an organ, but it's not a prolonging effect that could relapse every now and again, since it's something that is just constant. Like Hanako's condition is constant, Lilly's condition is constant, Emi's condition is constant, Shizune's condition is constant, Rin's condition is constant. These things are constant, and out of everyone, Hisao's is the only one that isn't a constant thing, but could bite back with the right conditions put into place, like, let's say, overexerting yourself, not taking your medication, or actually, as we discovered on that holiday, a combination of both. So I'm very glad that that epilogue played out, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to determine if Lilly actually went back to Scotland with Akira. But I'm glad it played out as it did. And just looking through the different characters in this game, like, route-wise, even though she's my least favourite character, Shizune's route, I think, is the strongest. Second place would be Lilly's. Third place would be Hanako's. Fourth place would be... gosh, let's have a look at these characters again. Sorry, I just need to look at these. So we've got Lilly, Rin, Shizune, Emi, and Hanako. So who would I consider as route as the weakest? I think Hanako's route is the shortest, but I don't think it's the weakest. Emi's route, I could probably say, is the weakest route. Like, it delves into some pretty deep topics, but there's a lack of other socialization factors involved. Like, there's Emi and her mother, and then there's the mention of her father as well, which I still believe hanging in the air that Emi's father died because Emi's father saved her from the rest of the accident itself that happened. Like, a car incident happened, Emi's father lost his life to save Emi, and then from there, Emi's legs were unfortunately caught within a car accident. But, like, any parent would do anything to ensure their child's survival, especially when it comes to Hanako in that case. And in that case, I think Emi and Hanako share something in common with the fact that one of their parents saved their life when in a extremely traumatic and life-threatening scenario. Lilly's parents, though, why her mother seems very nice to Hisao at the one time that, actually 2 times that Hisao ran up. I think Lilly's parents see her blindness as an obstacle rather than something to try and work around with. Rin, we don't know about her parents because it was never mentioned. Shizune, her father honestly is a bad case of getting you angry. Emi's mother, delightful. Hanako's parents unfortunately are not around because they both died in the fire. But it is lovely. So my favourite characters are as followed. I put on Twitter that my favourite character was Lilly. But I think from that good ending, I'm going to say Hanako is my favourite character. Then shortly after was Lilly. Then Emi. Then Rin. Then Shizune. Shizune has a bright personality, but her over leadership and tyrannical way sometimes, as Lilly quotes that Shizune is quite tyrannical, and her competitive nature really puts me off. Like, people like that just really put me off. But not bad characters, by any means given necessary, but Shizney just rubs me the wrong way. Rin is about as daft as a brush sometimes, and her personality seems still a mystery even after getting through all of her endings. Like, throughout all the bad endings that happened in this game, and that is with Shizney, Hanako, and Rin, I feel like Rin's was the only bad ending in which Hisao was very openly admitting to leaving past. Like, had enough of Rin and her over enigmatic ways and just trundling to the sunset. Shizney's, it was a mutual decision between the two to go their separate ways, because Shizney says she doesn't want to be around either Misha or Hisao for a while, but however long that lasts, I don't know. And then Hanako, it was an all Hanako side of thing, and Hisao I think was just forced to leave because Hanako was just so angry. But that was Hisao's fault. You was told once to leave Hanako alone, but then after the 5th time, she literally outraged. Like, going to, I've forgotten which one it was now. Hisao, yeah, this one here. That right there is an expression we've never seen of Hanako from before. Like, that real anger that is coming from that, and it's just inadvertent that her scarring makes that anger look all the more enrageous, ravenous, to the point. But then there's sadness as well, as in like she regretted doing that, but at the same time Hisao should not have pushed her in that extent. Like, all of these different events here culminate towards what I think is a fantastic visual novel. The very start of the game, where Iwanako gave Hisao that love letter, and then coming to school with our classmates in here, with Hanako being at the back, and then I've forgotten the name now of the bottom right girl. She's quite teasing, has only one full arm, one hand. And then moving over here, we've got Shizney and Misha at the very back. And I think that's it for all the characters we come to terms with on a first name basis. There's also Naomi, which Hanako knows. And then this is the bad ending between Keiji and Hisao if he didn't get affection enough with one of the girls. Like, Rin's route is actually the hardest to get along because it requires not getting enough points on the Lilly route, or the Lilly Hanako route. Then there's a letter from Iwanako after a considerable amount of time. This is Arika in either the normal or the good ending, but I don't think there's a bad ending in Lilly's route. And I think if that happened, then it would have been before they went on holiday. This is Emmy, when Emmy bumped into Hisao. Like, some of these are really out of order. Like, this one here only appears in Lilly's route. This one here appears in a few of the routes, if not all of them. This one only appears in Lilly's route. But then it goes straight to Emmy. Emmy on the start line, looking ever so determined. But then, like, other phases in here where images are not there. Let's see. There, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine there. I imagine this is one which has been blotted out. Nope, not that one. It must be another one then. This one could be. Yeah, 9 further images. So those are not for YouTube's eyes. That's at the gravestone, which I should think it's the first time Emmy's let anybody that close to her. Like, Emmy is a very stubborn and strong girl, but incredibly stubborn to say the least. Ass cheeks! Anything else? Hanako. This again appeared in Act 1, but there's also different expressions as well that could have been made. So Hanako's route. This has got 2 different images. This is of Lilly's route. That is of Hanako's route. She was describing about fire, sad, a drawing face, depicting that it was in the past when Hanako was still very young. This was shocking, to say the least. This part here, like, Hanako was utterly still. The entire class just focused on her. Like, that was the exact situation which she should not have been in. Like, just emotionally breaking down. Then there's this as well. She was saying here that she was okay when she clearly wasn't. And then Hanako... This is a very nice, like, viewpoint of Hanako, of starting to break out of her shell and starting to become a more social person. Like, this is really cool. And just as well, her uniform is really cool here as well. No, not uniform, but her clothing. And then looking back to see the empty chair. Already looked at that one. Hanako inspecting... Why is he grinning there? He shouldn't grin like that at all. Maybe we can't see the rest of his face. But this is Hisao opening up to Hanako in a way which we didn't expect, with Hisao opening up his chest to see that, yeah, I've also got a scar. Much like you've got a scar times however many there is. But they do share something in common. But in this case, Hisao can just easily hide his scar away beneath clothes, whereas it would be very, very difficult for Hanako to do that. But it was a very nice kind of open invitation, and this is Hanako revealing all of herself to Hisao in a way. But to Hisao, that didn't affect his viewpoint on Hanako, because Hisao looks beyond the exterior and saw Hanako as a person rather than a statue, for example. Then this is them cozy up in bed. This, oh gosh, this scene, man. I think this for me was when I actually pulled a few tears, I'm not gonna lie. Like this scene right here. Obviously, Hanako breaking down. Hanako believing that she is useless when both Lilly and Hisao were once to support her. When Hisao was like, no, you're not useless. I've relied on you more than you could possibly think. And then from there, Hanako smiled there. And then this was Hanako's gift that she wants to give to Hisao for a bit of time. I like how all the girls are smiling. The guy is like, what the hell, man? And I think this is actually beside like a bakery of sorts, because of the muffins on there. Like, all of these are so good. So good. It almost makes me want more of this game. Makes me want more. Makes me want more of like 5 different other games that that is canonical after the good ending of each of the characters. And then we begin with Lilly's route. And then this was like the first time where Lilly's kind of really opening up to Hisao. I don't know if Lilly's done this to Hanako actually, about like feeling someone's face and getting a feature for them and stuff like that. That's within the evening. That's I forgot when that was actually. This is the origami. This is the table. This is prevalent in both Lilly and Hanako's route. This is also prevalent in both of their routes. This is Lilly's route. Very peaceful. This is Lilly's route, but I think this is where their relationship really sparked into a relationship. Not like these 2 characters, but for Hisao and Lilly. And then I was wondering what that was, because beforehand, when going through the game again after the one of the other parts, I was wondering why there was an extra image unlock, but it couldn't have been adult content, because that would be disgusting doing that on a train. This is where Lilly said I love you several times to Hisao. She did not want to lose Hisao at all, because Hisao didn't realise up until this point that Lilly's been relying on Hisao more than he thought that she did. Like, just having a companion there with you, just somebody being there for you in your times of need is just... It's just... Well, I've never experienced it myself, but it must be a very fleeting feeling of warmth and comfort, and also at times confusion. Like, I'm not going to lie, it can be like a time of confusion. Then there's this as well, which I thought was quite a comforting scene, even though I didn't really choose my expression. But looking back at it now, this scene is quite comforting in a way, because it shows 2 different people who share the same family bloodline, but are related to different fathers, and both the fathers themselves hating each other. This shows that Shizune still thinks of her as a family member in a way, of looking out for her. And then there's this at the airport. What does this child remind me of? For one, with the teddy bear. Probably someone from, oh gosh. I forgot what it's called now. It reminds me of like an anime movie or something like that. I'm not too sure now. Then that's where it goes below. You might think, oh, that doesn't look any different. There is. There's a blur to it. There's a slight blur to the second one. Then there's the time at the hospital. Then there's this scene as well, which happened, and my gosh, when the music suddenly changed to that one where it noted the box, it was like somehow Hisao's pleading really reached to Lilly here and stopped her in her tracks. And she was like, for once, let me worry about you. Let me cry for you. In a ways. Like, Lilly's one was the only one with an epilogue. I just realised that now. Like, Lilly's route was the only one with an epilogue. Then started with Rin's route here. Discovering her for the first time, eating with a fork. Like, I didn't actually notice that the first time around, but it was probably kind of good thing. It was like, wait, she's eating with her foot rather than her hand. It'd be like, she can't use her hands because she doesn't have any. Hello there. Hey. Looking around. That was actually when I thought Kenji joined the club. And then... whose route is that on? It probably was Rin's route, actually. Going into the bathroom. Like, Rin's route was so long ago, it feels like now. Rin there. Again, painted with her feet. Looking a little distraught. Looking up. Like, Rin was probably the only one that didn't really seek romance in a way. But just like a close mutual friendship. Those two looking at one another. Then there's Rin on the bed. There we go. And again with that. I mean, like when Rin just leaped towards Hisao when she was under a lot of drug influence. Not like legal drugs, but just like ones that helped her within the rain, of course. Because on that occasion, when they went out there in the umbrella she caught cold. Yeah, this was a moment where she just suddenly leapt forward and kissed Hisao. Whether she remembers it or not is another mystery. Then she was here asleep. Hair breezing, that's really surprising. Like an animated CG crime there. Those two there. This is when like they first discovered smoking. Eek. Like I hate the idea of smoking, and like I'm not a person who likes to hang around smokers at all. I forgot what oh, it was a piece of orange, that's right. And then Rin here looking a bit broken, not gonna lie. And then she wondered why Hisao was here. And then hugging her. Then there's this. This is where she actually broke down. This was like the deciding factor between like the normal ending and the good ending or bad ending. This is the normal ending in which Rin broke away from Hisao, saying that they can no longer be friends and stuff like that. But she wanted to comfort. Yeah, this is when Rin wants to comfort Hisao in a way. But also Rin's realization is that she can't give what she wants to another character because of a lack of arms. And in a way, she went. And then there's this scene as well. Drying her off. Then there's this scene as well. Which obviously leads to other ones. And then there's, this is a good ending itself where they were both in the depths of the forest. Waving her waving her shoulders around. Good ending. And then Shizune's route was really interesting as well. It's like Shizune's route was the only anomaly here, because in the beginning I thought Misha would also have her own route, but it's deeply tied with Shizune's. And you could also say, in a way, that a bad ending could have been a split from Shizune, where they would both do their own thing and then Shizune wouldn't have an interpreter. Then these two clash. This is within the main route of the game. Why on earth the game is depicting Shizune's underwear, I don't know. Then there's Shizune and Hanako playing chess. Oh gosh, and then Shizune giving a very, very mischievous grin there. This is Kenji as well. I didn't show this, but yeah. He revealed his eyes. This is at one of the festivals. I don't think it's one that Lilly and Hisao were talking about beforehand. And then this is Shizune again. Like, opening up and stuff like that. This is along the good route. Like this part here when they held hands, stuff like that. That is still decidable. Like further back before the change was made. And then this was in here. Akira and Lilly in the car alongside Misha and Shizune. Then there's this one as well. They were all fishing. Switch rods. Like this is also when we discover that Shizune has a kinky side to her. And then 6 further images not unlocked, which is the adult route. This is Misha on the roof. No, wait, no, this is Misha on the rooftop. Like this you could mistake as Rin for a second. Like very, very similar style. Very, very similar hair. Very similar facial features. Like the only difference is it could really be starting is the arms on Misha and the lack of arms on Rin. Then there's this one there on the rooftop. Shizune really looking away. Hello. Like there's still more images to unlock, but I think they're definitely within the adult section of the game. Which I'm not. Oh yeah, this was Lilly and Shizune when they were supposed to still kissing on. Then there's this scene here, bloody hell, having you know what in the classroom. That's very dastardly and naughty of you two. Then there's that. There's all that. And then further images that need to... Wait. Maybe we proceed onto other images. Misha really trying very hard. And goodness sakes, Muto looking very, very tired there. Then this is the bad ending. Look, this is another time I was distraught. Like, I'm not a huge fan of Shizune as a character, but even I can say that this particular part was very, very emotional. Especially by the factor that Shizune carries the purple doll around in which Hisao won for her. Like, I think that was really the breaking point there. Because of the doll, because of the factor that Shizune carries around something which Hisao got for her. And then there's this victorious one as well, in ambition, going towards the sky. And there's this one here which has all sorts of different miscellaneous items which were presented throughout the entirety of the game. Yeah, this is Haruko's part where Hisao brought her that phone ornament. This is Emi's route. I've forgotten which one that is. And no, wait, that's in either Lilly or Hanukkah's route, I believe, when we went into the antique store. That's the laptop. That's the Braille typewriter. I forgot the actual name for it now. This is the chessboard. That's a cardboard. Oh, that's Kenji's package. That's right. And we'll move on from there. Ironika's letter. First page, second page. And then this. Misha. I didn't even realize it was Misha before Akira actually told us, but it was Misha. Like, the lack of pink hair really gave it away that I didn't feel like that was Misha. And then there's Lilly and Shizune getting along. Like, distant memories for those two. This honestly is a fantastic game. And I wish I played it sooner, actually, like when I first started playing visual novels. I wish I discovered this game. But also I'd never known about it until I was told about it. And this is a wonderful experience about learning that there are people out there who have something in which you don't, that is hindering them from being able to have a normal life. But for this school, within this school, they're given the opportunity to open up their horizons and be able to see that while their conditions may hinder them, that doesn't stop them from being able to do what it is that they want to do within their life. Like, this game should tell you that there are people who have it far worse off than you do. Hanukkah's one, I think especially. Like, then there's also Hisao's heart condition. Then there's Emi's lack of lower legs. And then there's Shizune's lack of ability to communicate because she's both deaf and mute. Mute means you can't talk and deaf means you can't hear. So she's both of those. So I think in some ways there are worse factors about some conditions and then there are worse factors about others. Being able to communicate, being able to just simply move around, being able to do exercises, like all of these different kind of things, they branch off from the very same beginning, but as life goes on, stuff happens. Like Lilly's one was the only one which was born from that. I don't know if Shizune's was also something that she got when she was first born. Like she didn't. I don't think she clarified that her mute and deafness came from when she was first born. But Lilly's was definitely classified, or at some point hinted heavily towards the fact that she was always blind, so therefore she wouldn't have known what colour was like visually, or any kind of visuality. She wouldn't know what colour was like because she's blind. But no matter how you look at this game, it is a very, very constructive, focused, story-rich visual novel that taps into a lot of very heavy and sensitive subjects. But I think those kind of subjects gives it a lot of gravity and weight to make it an experience that is fantastic in its own ways, not because of the conditions themselves. No, 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 no. I wouldn't wish upon anybody being blind, being deaf, being mute, having a heart condition, the lack of legs, the lack of arms. How that goes about in the character's ability to get around in life. Like Rin using her feet, Hanaka using I forgot what they're called now, but they're mechanized legs of some sort in order for her to be able to move about. Although I think Rin has it worse off than Emi, I'm not gonna lie. Like, no arms is minutely worse than no legs. Because with arms, I think you do so much more than your legs. Like, you can still sit down with legs or without legs. But without arms, it feels like at first you're severely constricted. But also as well, when it comes to arms, was Rin born without arms? We definitely know that Emi was born with all of her legs. Anyways, I think this outro has gone far too long. But I just want to wrap up this game by saying that this is either one of my favourites or my favourite visual novels ever played. And I am very happy to go through this game, and I don't regret tearing up any time, especially with Hanaka's good ending, with the way she broke down there. Like, Hanaka's just such a sweet girl. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and we'll see each others in another video in the future. Not of this game, although I may do like a overhaul review of this game, just talking about the different specifics, but I think I've already done that in a way here, but just more generalized. Thank you so much for watching, guys. This has been 35 videos on one game, each of them consisting of at least an hour, if not nearly 3 hours. Like, those ones I should have separated into 2 videos, actually. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and take care of yourselves.